I remember the beeping before I remember the pain. The ceiling was white, the air cold, and a nurse said my name like she was checking a box. When my mother stepped closer, she didn't ask if I was okay. She said, "You're replaceable. Your sister matters more." I stayed still, not because I was weak, but because I was finally paying attention. A clipboard appeared at the foot of the bed. Times. Doses. Notes that felt rushed. One line didn't belong. When a hospital administrator returned, she didn't look at my mother. She studied the chart, asked a single question, and left without explaining anything. The room felt smaller, quieter, like the walls were listening. Growing up, I learned how to disappear politely. My sister was praised for existing. I was praised for not needing help. Decisions happened around me, not with me. Money was always temporary. Control always for now. I learned to be patient because patience was safer than pushing back. That habit followed me into adulthood. Forms slid across tables. "Just routine," my mother said. "Just a signature." I asked questions and was called difficult. I refused to sign, and the pressure sharpened. Smiles thinned. Calls increased. I stayed calm. Back in that hospital bed, the missing note finally made sense. By evening, a prosecutor froze control of the trust tied to my work and my name. My mother's confidence vanished without a scene. This moment didn't start here. It only ended here. And the silence told me the truth would keep moving without my permission. I grew up knowing my place in the family, without anyone ever explaining it. My sister never had to earn attention. She received it automatically. Her smallest achievements became celebrations. Her mistakes were explained away as pressure or stress. When it came to me, success was expected and struggle was ignored. My parents called this balance. They said my sister needed more support because she was emotional and meant for bigger things. I was labeled independent, responsible, easy. At first, those words sounded like compliments. Over time, I understood what they really meant. Independence meant no one checked on me. Responsibility meant I was expected to absorb disappointment quietly. Money followed the same silent rules. Conversations stopped when I entered the room. Decisions were already made. When I asked questions, my mother smiled and said, "We're handling it." My father stayed quiet. I was told not to worry, as if curiosity itself was a flaw. The trust my grandfather created was meant to support my work in medical technology. On paper, my name was attached to it. In practice, control slipped away slowly. Temporary authority became routine. Oversight turned into entitlement. I was reassured it was all for stability, efficiency, and my benefit. I wanted peace more than conflict. So I stayed silent. I told myself patience was maturity. I told myself silence was strength. But favoritism never stays small. It grows quietly. And by the time I noticed how deep it had spread, my family was standing comfortably on it, while I was expected to keep holding everything up. I didn't realize the pressure had started until it became routine. Papers appeared at family dinners, slid toward me between plates. My mother called them updates. My father called them formalities. "Just sign," they said, like my name was a door they could open whenever they wanted. As my career in medical technology grew, so did their urgency. Meetings were scheduled without asking me. Emails copied everyone except me. When I questioned a clause or a timeline, my sister rolled her eyes. "You always overthink," she said. My mother added, "Don't complicate something that's already decided." The documents always shifted control away from me in small ways. Temporary permissions, shared authority, emergency access that never expired. I read every line. I asked what would happen if something went wrong. The answers were vague. Smiles replaced explanations. I was told to trust them because family wouldn't hurt family. Saying no changed the temperature of the room. Calls became shorter. Invitations stopped. My mother's voice hardened. "After everything we've done for you," she said, like support was a debt I owed back with silence. That was when I understood the pressure wasn't about efficiency or protection. It was about control. They needed my signature to make their version permanent. I stopped signing. I started saving copies. Dates, versions, emails. I didn't confront anyone. I watched. By the time I collapsed, they thought resistance meant exhaustion, not awareness. They believed time would wear me down. They didn't know I was already preparing for the moment patience would become proof. The night I collapsed didn't feel dramatic at first. I remember standing in my kitchen, reaching for water, and then the floor rushing up to meet me. When I woke again, lights were too bright, and my chest felt heavy. Someone said my blood pressure had dropped suddenly. Someone else said it was lucky I'd been found in time. While I was unconscious, decisions were made without me. Visitors were approved. Forms were signed. A medication was logged twice in my chart, hours apart, by two different hands. At the time, I didn't know that. I only felt smaller, like my body had betrayed me the same way my family always had. My mother arrived before I could sit up on my own. She spoke to the nurses like she owned the room. She corrected details I hadn't shared. When I tried to ask questions, she interrupted, saying I needed rest. "Let us handle it," she said again, like a promise and a warning at the same time. Later that night, after everyone left, I asked a nurse for my chart. She hesitated, then handed it over. I read slowly. Dates. Times. Initials. One timestamp didn't match the others. It was small, almost invisible. But it didn't belong. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not fear. Clarity. I realized this wasn't just about control over money or decisions. It was about access. About how easily my life had been managed without my consent. I closed the folder and rested my hands on top of it. Whatever had been happening around me, it had gone too far. And someone had finally left a trail. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't confront my family or raise my voice. Asked for records. First politely, then formally. Medical logs. Visitor authorizations. Medication reports. The hospital complied because hospitals run on documentation, not loyalty. What came back wasn't explosive. It was orderly. Emails matched timestamps. Access permissions aligned with signatures I recognized and some I didn't. The same names appeared again and again, always close to decisions I hadn't approved. Patterns formed quietly, the way truth often does. I requested an internal review, then an external audit. Each step created distance between my family and the narrative they controlled. My mother stopped calling. My sister sent one message asking if I was feeling better. I didn't respond. A compliance officer asked me why I was requesting everything at once. I told her I wanted accuracy. She nodded like she understood more than she could say. As the review expanded, the trust came under scrutiny too. Emergency permissions. Temporary authority. Access that mirrored hospital records in timing and intent. Different systems. Same behavior. I learned something important during those weeks. You don't need to convince anyone when the paperwork speaks clearly. You just need to make sure it's all in the same room. By the time a prosecutor was notified, I was no longer nervous. I was tired, but steady. I had stopped wondering whether I was overreacting. The evidence didn't argue. It accumulated. And for the first time, my family wasn't ahead of me. They were waiting to be caught up. I stayed in the hospital longer than necessary on paper. Not because I was weak, but because I needed time. Time for reports to finalize. Time for reviews to close. Time for every loose end to stop moving. I said very little when my family visited. My mother mistook my quiet for relief. My sister mistook it for confusion. They spoke freely around me, correcting each other, filling the space with confidence. They didn't realize how exposed they sounded. Behind the scenes, professionals were doing their jobs. Compliance finalized its findings. Legal teams compared timelines. The trust administrator flagged inconsistencies that could no longer be explained away as misunderstandings. Everything lined up. I didn't set a trap. I stepped out of the way and let systems designed for accountability do what they always do when given enough information. The day the prosecutor arrived, it wasn't dramatic. No raised voices. No threats. Just questions asked in the right order. My mother tried to lead the conversation. She smiled. She corrected wording. She failed. Control over the trust was frozen before lunch. Access was revoked quietly. Temporary permissions expired permanently. My sister stopped checking her phone. My mother stopped talking. I watched from the bed, calm in a way I never felt before. Not triumphant. Not angry.
Certain.
This wasn't revenge. It was alignment. Facts finally matched reality. And nothing they said could change that anymore. The prosecutor didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse anyone directly. He asked questions slowly, like he already knew the answers and just needed to hear them said out loud. My mother tried to control the room the way she always had. She corrected timelines. She reframed intentions. She smiled at the wrong moments. None of it worked. When the prosecutor read back the sequence of events, the room shifted. Hospital access. Medication records. Trust permissions. Separate systems, same timing. My sister stared at the floor. For the first time in my life, she didn't look confident. She looked unsure where to place herself. I felt something unexpected then. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Relief. The kind that loosens your shoulders without asking permission. For years, I had been told I was dramatic, sensitive, difficult. Hearing facts spoken calmly by someone with authority felt like finally being translated correctly. My mother tried one last time. She said this was all a misunderstanding. She said intentions mattered. The prosecutor nodded and said intentions didn't override outcomes. Silence followed. Heavy, undeniable silence. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Everything I had swallowed for years was being handled professionally, precisely, without emotion. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about winning. It was about being seen accurately. As the meeting ended, my mother avoided my eyes. My sister left the room quickly. I stayed where I was, breathing evenly, knowing something fundamental had shifted. Not just control or money. Power had moved away from noise and into truth. The consequences arrived quietly.
No announcements. No apologies.
Just actions. Access to the trust was frozen pending review. Temporary authority expired without renewal. Accounts that once moved freely stopped responding altogether. My phone stayed silent, which told me everything I needed to know. Hospital administrators followed up with written confirmations. The review was complete. Safeguards were updated. Restrictions were put in place. I read each email carefully, not because I doubted them, but because I wanted to see my name attached to decisions again. My mother attempted one call. I didn't answer. My sister sent a message asking if we could talk as family. I let it sit. For the first time, urgency wasn't mine to manage. What surprised me most was how calm I felt. I had imagined this moment would feel dramatic. Instead, it felt clean, like something misaligned had finally been corrected. There was no thrill in watching access disappear. Only certainty. The trust administrator explained next steps. Oversight. Documentation.
Time.
All things I was comfortable with. This system spoke my language. It didn't reward volume or entitlement. It rewarded clarity. I looked around my hospital room, the same place where I had been told I was replaceable. Nothing about me felt replaceable anymore. Not my work. Not my judgment. Not my presence. They had lost control because control was never theirs to begin with. They just borrowed it from my silence. And silence, once reclaimed, becomes ownership. Healing didn't happen all at once. It came in small confirmations, signed documents, updated records. The quiet understanding that no one could move pieces around me without my consent anymore. I went home when I was ready, not when anyone suggested I should. I didn't cut my family off with a speech. I created distance with boundaries. Fewer answers. Clear rules.
No explanations.
The absence of chaos told me how much of it I had been carrying. I returned to my work slowly.
Carefully.
The trust was secure, but more importantly, so was my sense of judgment. I stopped questioning whether I had imagined things. I stopped replaying conversations in my head. Facts had already done that work for me. People like to imagine justice as loud. Courtrooms, arguments, closure speeches. For me, It was paperwork filed correctly and authority applied calmly. It was realizing I didn't need to prove my worth to people who benefited from doubting it. If you've ever been told you matter less, or that your silence makes you weak, remember this. Silence can be strategy. Patience can be protection. And systems exist for moments when personal boundaries are ignored. If this story resonated with you, stay here. Not for drama, but for reminders that quiet strength still counts.